The secure phone rang at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I stared at the unknown number flashing on my screen, my heart already racing before I even answered. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and terrifying. "Is this Michael Chen?" "Yeah, who's asking?" "This is Colonel Patricia Hayes from the Defense Intelligence Agency. We need you in Washington within 12 hours. A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. 6 months earlier, my own mother had called me a complete failure, said I'd never amount to anything more than a community college dropout who couldn't even hold down a job at Best Buy. Now I was being summoned to brief the Secretary of Defense on something called Operation Nightfall. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in the back of that black sedan, watching the Virginia countryside blur past in the pre-dawn darkness. 3 years ago, I was living in my childhood bedroom in Bakersfield, California, playing video games 16 hours a day, and surviving on energy drinks and whatever leftovers my mom didn't throw away first. My family had given up on me completely. My younger sister Emma was graduating summa cum laude from Stanford. My dad, a successful cardiac surgeon, would introduce her to his colleagues with pride. When people asked about me, he'd change the subject or mutter something about me, finding my path eventually. The last real conversation I'd had with my mother ended with her screaming that I was wasting my life. "You're 24 years old, Michael. Your sister's getting her master's degree, while you can't even pass a basic computer certification exam. What's wrong with you? Are you just stupid?" That word hit differently coming from her. Stupid. It echoed in my head for weeks, but here's what nobody in my family knew. I wasn't just playing games in that basement room. I was building something that would eventually change everything. It started innocently enough. I'd always been obsessed with patterns, especially in data. While other kids were outside playing sports, I was inside teaching myself programming languages. Not because anyone encouraged it, my parents saw it as another way I was avoiding real life. But numbers and code made sense to me in a way that nothing else did. The breakthrough came during one of my worst periods. I'd been unemployed for 8 months. My parents were threatening to kick me out. I was spending my days diving deep into publicly available satellite imagery, trying to understand weather patterns and geographical changes over time. It was supposed to be just a hobby project, something to keep my mind busy. I started noticing anomalies, tiny discrepancies in commercial satellite photos that didn't match up with official geographical surveys. At first, I thought it was just poor image quality or processing errors. But the more I looked, the more systematic these discrepancies appeared. I built a program to analyze thousands of satellite images automatically, cross-referencing them with geological surveys, weather data, and terrain mapping. What I discovered kept me awake for 3 straight days. There were structures being built in remote locations that weren't appearing on any official records. Not just one or two, dozens of them, scattered across different continents, all following similar architectural patterns. They were being constructed in areas so remote that most people would never accidentally stumble across them. The logical part of my brain told me this was probably just classified military installations or mining operations, but something felt different about these sites. They were too uniform, too precisely placed, and they were all being built simultaneously across multiple countries that weren't exactly allies. I spent the next 4 months refining my analysis. I mapped every site I could find, documented the construction timelines, and tried to understand what connected them all. The pattern that emerged was unlike anything I'd ever seen. My first instinct was to post about it online, maybe on some conspiracy forums where people might find it interesting. But something held me back. Instead, I decided to reach out to a professor I'd had during my brief stint at community college, Dr. Sarah Martinez, who taught a course on satellite imagery analysis that I'd actually excelled in. Dr. Martinez took one look at my data and went completely silent. After 20 minutes of reviewing my findings, she asked if I'd shown this to anyone else. When I said no, she made me promise not to share it until she could make some calls. Those calls, as it turned out, went straight to the Defense Intelligence Agency. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a sterile conference room in a nondescript building in Virginia, surrounded by people whose business cards just said consultant or analyst with no company names. They peppered me with questions for 6 hours straight. Not just about my findings, but about my methods, my background, my family, my finances, everything. The woman leading the session, who introduced herself only as Rebecca, finally leaned back in her chair and asked the question that changed my life. How would you feel about working for us? I laughed. Actually, I laughed out loud. I don't even have a college degree. My mom thinks I'm unemployable. What could you possibly want with me? Rebecca exchanged glances with the others in the room. Mr. Chen, what you've discovered independently, using consumer-grade equipment and public data sources, took our best analysts 3 years to piece together. And you did it more comprehensively than we did. That's when she told me about Operation Nightfall. The sites I'd identified weren't random construction projects. They were part of a coordinated international effort that posed what Rebecca called a significant threat to global stability. She couldn't tell me more unless I agreed to sign security clearances that would legally bind me to secrecy for the rest of my life. I thought about my mother's words, about being called stupid, about living in that basement room with no prospects and no future. What exactly would I be doing? I asked. What you've already been doing, Rebecca said, but with better equipment, unlimited resources, and a team of the smartest people in the intelligence community supporting your work. The paperwork took 3 weeks to process. During that time, I couldn't tell my family anything except that I'd gotten a government consulting job and would be moving to Washington. My dad assumed it was some low-level administrative position. My mom asked if it came with health insurance. None of them bothered to ask what kind of work I'd actually be doing. My first day at the facility, I still can't say where it is even now. I was assigned to a team of 12 analysts working on what they called unconventional threat assessment. My job was to continue developing the pattern recognition systems I'd created. But now, with access to classified satellite networks, real-time intelligence feeds, and computational resources that would have cost millions of dollars in the private sector. Within my first month, my algorithms had identified 47 additional sites that had been missed by traditional intelligence gathering. By month 3, we'd intercepted communications that confirmed what everyone feared but no one wanted to say out loud. The sites weren't just connected, they were part of a single, massive operation being coordinated by a network of actors who had somehow managed to stay completely off the radar of every major intelligence agency in the world. And that's when Colonel Hayes called me at 3:47 a.m. on that Tuesday morning. "We need you to brief the Secretary of Defense," she'd said. "Your analysis is the only thing we have that makes sense of what we're seeing." As the sedan pulled through the security checkpoint of a building I'd only seen in movies, I couldn't help but think about that word again, stupid. In 6 hours, I'd be standing in front of some of the most powerful people in the government, explaining a threat that I'd discovered while my family thought I was just wasting my life playing video games. The security guard checked my credentials and waved us through. Through the tinted windows, I could see the Washington Monument in the distance, illuminated against the dark sky. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Mom's still asking what your job actually is. She thinks you're making it up." I smiled and put the phone away. In a few hours, she'd find out just how wrong she was about her supposedly stupid son. The Pentagon briefing room was nothing like the movies. No dramatic lighting or massive screens dominating the walls. Just a rectangular table, fluorescent lights, and 12 of the most intimidating people I'd ever seen in one room. Secretary of Defense William Harrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by Joint Chiefs, intelligence directors, and people whose titles I couldn't even pronounce. I was 24 years old, wearing a suit that Colonel Hayes had literally bought for me the night before because I didn't own one. "Mr. Chen," Secretary Harrison began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd made life-and-death decisions for decades. "We understand you've identified something our entire intelligence apparatus missed. Walk us through it." I opened my laptop, the same beat-up Dell I'd used in my parents' basement, and connected it to their secure network. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was about to brief the most powerful military leaders in the world, using equipment I'd bought with birthday money 3 years ago. "The sites I discovered aren't random," I began, pulling up my analysis. "They're positioned at exact intervals following what appears to be a mathematical sequence. Each location is precisely 47.3 miles from a major population center, always positioned to take advantage of specific geological features. General Patricia Stone, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. You're saying this is coordinated? Not just coordinated, calculated. I switched to a global map showing all 89 sites I'd identified. Look at the pattern. They're not just built in remote areas, they're built in areas that will become strategically significant based on climate change projections, shifting political boundaries, and resource availability over the next 50 years. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The room went dead silent. Director Reynolds from the CIA spoke first. How could you possibly know our climate change projections? Those models are classified above your clearance level. I don't need your projections, I replied. I built my own using public climate data, geological surveys, and historical patterns. The correlation with your site locations is 97.3% accurate. That's when I knew I had them. These weren't just military installations or mining operations. Someone was playing a game 50 years into the future, and they were positioning their pieces now. Colonel Hayes activated a secure screen at the far end of the room. Show them the construction timeline. I pulled up my most disturbing finding. Every single site began construction on the same day, March 15th, 3 years ago, not within the same week or month, the exact same day, across 6 continents, in 12 different countries, some of which don't even have diplomatic relations with each other. That's impossible, Director Reynolds muttered. That's what I thought. But here's what's even more impossible. I switched to a financial analysis I'd spent months developing. The construction materials, the equipment, the logistics, everything needed to build these sites simultaneously. It represents approximately $847 billion in coordinated spending. That's more than the GDP of most countries. Secretary Harrison's expression had shifted from skeptical to deeply concerned. Who has that kind of resources? That's where it gets interesting. The money isn't coming from any single source. It's distributed across thousands of shell companies, investment funds, and private entities. I mapped the financial networks, and they lead back to a consortium of individuals who on paper have never met each other. I pulled up a web of connections that had taken me 4 months to unravel. Names, companies, financial transactions, all leading to 17 people scattered across the globe who seemed to have nothing in common except unlimited resources and perfect timing. Dr. Klaus Zimmermann, tech billionaire from Germany, Senator Margaret Walsh from our own government, Li Wei-chen, Chinese manufacturing magnate, Viktor Petrov, Russian energy oligarch. On paper, these people are enemies. Their countries have been in various states of conflict for decades, but their money is building the same network of facilities. General Stone studied the display. You're suggesting a shadow organization operating above national governments? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm showing you the data. I switched to communications intercepts that the NSA had provided. 3 weeks ago, my pattern analysis identified a burst transmission that occurred simultaneously from each site. 47 seconds of encrypted data, transmitted to a satellite network that isn't owned by any government or registered corporation. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Director Reynolds was typing furiously on his secure tablet. Secretary Harrison held up a hand for silence. Mr. Chen, in your assessment, what are we dealing with? I took a breath. This was the moment that would either validate everything I'd discovered or end my career before it started. Based on the construction patterns, the financial networks, and the communication protocols, I believe we're looking at the infrastructure for a parallel system of global governance. These sites aren't military installations, they're nodes in a network designed to operate independently of existing political structures. You mean they're planning to replace governments? General Stone asked. No, they're planning to make governments irrelevant. I pulled up my final analysis, the one that had kept me awake for the past month. Every site is positioned to control critical resources or transportation corridors, not today, but based on projections of where those resources will be most valuable in 2070. Climate change will shift agricultural zones, rising sea levels will change shipping routes, political instability will create new refugee corridors. These sites are positioned to control all of it. And the timeline? Secretary Harrison asked. Based on construction progress and equipment deployment, I estimate they'll be fully operational within 18 months. After that, whoever controls this network will have more influence over global resource distribution than any government currently in existence. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Director Reynolds spoke. What's their next move? That's the problem. I can tell you what they've built and when they built it, but I can't tell you what they plan to do with it. The encryption on those burst transmissions is unlike anything I've seen. It's not just advanced, it's using mathematical principles that shouldn't exist yet. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Which brings us to why you're really here, Mr. Chen. We need you to figure out how to break that encryption. We need to know what they're planning, and when they plan to do it. And we need to know who's really running this operation, Secretary Harrison added. Because if you're right about the scale of this network, the 17 people you've identified are just the public face. Someone else is pulling the strings. I closed my laptop and looked around the room. 6 months ago, I was unemployable. My family thought I was a failure. Now I was being asked to uncover what might be the largest conspiracy in human history. How much time do I have? How much time do you need? Secretary Harrison replied. Give me access to the NSA's quantum computing array and a team of cryptographers who don't ask questions. I'll have preliminary results in 2 weeks. Done. Colonel Hayes will coordinate your resources. This operation is now classified at the highest levels. You report directly to me. As the meeting broke up, I caught my reflection in the polished conference table. The scared kid from Bakersfield was gone. In his place was someone who'd just been handed the most important assignment in the intelligence community. My phone buzzed with another text from my sister. Dad wants to know if your job comes with a pension. I almost laughed. A pension was the least of my concerns. In 2 weeks, I'd either crack the most sophisticated encryption system ever created, or I'd fail to prevent something that could reshape civilization itself. Walking out of the Pentagon that morning, I realized my mother had been wrong about me being stupid, but she'd been right about one thing. I was definitely not living in the real world anymore. I was living in something much more dangerous. The NSA's quantum computing facility looked like something from a science fiction movie. Housed 300 feet underground in Maryland, the quantum array consisted of machines that operated at temperatures colder than outer space. I was given unlimited access to computational power that most nations could only dream of. My team consisted of 3 cryptographers who'd been pulled from other classified projects. Dr. Amanda Foster, a mathematical prodigy who'd cracked encryption systems for the military since she was 19. James Rodriguez, a former hacker who'd been recruited by the government after bringing down half the internet as a teenager. Sarah Kim, a quantum physics specialist who understood the theoretical mathematics behind encryption better than anyone alive. None of them knew the full scope of what we were working on. Only I had clearance to see the complete picture. We set up operations in a secure lab that had no windows, no cell service, and required 3 different biometric scans just to enter. For the next 10 days, this room became my entire world. The encrypted transmissions I'd intercepted were unlike anything we'd encountered. Traditional encryption relies on mathematical problems that are difficult but not impossible to solve given enough time and processing power. This was different. The patterns suggested they were using quantum entanglement principles to create codes that were theoretically unbreakable. This shouldn't be possible with current technology, Doctor. Kim said on our 3rd day, staring at the quantum signatures we'd isolated. The level of quantum coherence required to maintain this encryption across global distances would need infrastructure that doesn't exist. What if it does exist? I asked. What if that's what those sites are really building? The realization hit me like a physical blow. We'd been thinking about this all wrong. The sites weren't just strategic positions for controlling resources. They were components of a quantum communication network that would make their encryption literally uncrackable by any government on Earth. I called Colonel Hayes immediately. We need real-time surveillance on all 89 sites, I told her. Not satellite imagery. We need people on the ground taking detailed photographs of every piece of equipment being installed. That's impossible, Chen. Some of these sites are in hostile territory. Others are so remote it would take weeks just to reach them. Then we use drones, commercial satellites, anything that can get us current information about what's being built there. Within 48 hours, we had reconnaissance data flowing in from around the world. What we discovered changed everything. Each site wasn't just one facility, it was 3 distinct structures connected by underground tunnels. The main building housed what appeared to be quantum computing equipment. The second structure contained massive power generation systems, far beyond what would be needed for normal operations. The third building was the mystery. Dr. Rodriguez, who'd been analyzing the architectural plans we'd obtained, made the connection first. "These aren't communication arrays," he said, pointing to detailed schematics we'd acquired from a construction company in Romania. "Look at the antenna configurations, the power requirements, the cooling systems. These are quantum teleportation nodes." "That's impossible," Dr. Foster replied. "Quantum teleportation only works with subatomic particles, and only across microscopic distances." "Not anymore," Dr. Kim said quietly. She'd been running calculations for 6 hours straight. "If you had enough processing power, enough energy, and perfect quantum coherence across multiple nodes, you could theoretically teleport information, or even physical matter, anywhere in the network instantaneously." The room went silent. We were no longer looking at an advanced communication system. We were looking at technology that could fundamentally change the laws of physics as we understood them. I spent the next 72 hours running every possible scenario through the quantum computers. The mathematics checked out. If someone had actually built a global quantum teleportation network, they wouldn't just control resources and communications. They could move anything, people, weapons, supplies, anywhere in the world in seconds. But there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. The power requirements for such a system would be enormous. Each site would need to generate approximately 2.7 gigawatts of continuous power. That's nearly 3 times the output of a typical nuclear power plant. Multiply that by 89 sites, and you're talking about power consumption equivalent to the entire electrical grid of the United States. "Where are they getting the energy?" I asked Dr. Kim. She pulled up power grid analyses from around the world. "That's what's terrifying. They're not drawing power from existing grids. Each site has its own independent power source. Nuclear reactors, no radiation signatures, no uranium purchases, no nuclear waste disposal. Whatever they're using, it's not nuclear fission." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his workstation. "What if it's nuclear fusion?" "Commercial fusion doesn't exist yet," Dr. Foster said. "Commercial fusion doesn't exist," I corrected. "But what if they've solved it? What if they've developed clean, unlimited energy sources 50 years before the rest of the world?" The implications were staggering. Whoever controlled this network wouldn't just have strategic advantages. They'd have technological capabilities that made them decades ahead of every government and corporation on the planet. That's when we intercepted the second transmission. It happened at exactly 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time on a Friday. Every site transmitted simultaneously again, but this time the burst lasted for 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Dr. Kim's quantum analysis equipment registered patterns that shouldn't have been possible. "They're not just sending data," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're sending matter." "What kind of matter?" "I don't know. But the quantum signatures suggest they moved approximately 47 kilograms of something from Site 23 in Norway to Site 61 in Chile, instantaneously. We'd just witnessed the first successful long-distance teleportation of physical matter in human history, and we had no idea what they'd moved or why. I called Secretary Harrison directly, bypassing all normal protocols. "We need to evacuate the personnel from the nearest sites immediately," I told him. "Whatever this network is capable of, they're about to activate it." Based on what evidence? They just teleported nearly 50 kilograms of unknown material across the globe. If they can move that much matter instantaneously, they can move anything, including weapons. There was a long pause on the secure line. How long until they're fully operational? I looked at the data streaming across my screens. Construction progress reports, power generation increases, communication frequency analyses. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Based on current activity levels, I estimate 72 hours until network activation. What happens when it goes online? Honestly, I don't know. But whoever controls it will have capabilities that no government or military on Earth can counter. They'll be able to move resources, personnel, or weapons anywhere in the world without warning. Traditional borders become meaningless. National defense becomes impossible. What do you recommend? We need to identify the real leadership structure behind this network. The 17 people I identified earlier are just the financial front. Someone else is coordinating this operation, and they have access to technology that's decades beyond anything we understand. How do we find them? I looked at my team, still working frantically to decode transmissions that were becoming more complex by the hour. Kim was tracking quantum entanglement patterns that mapped connections between sites. Rodriguez was analyzing construction schedules that revealed a mathematical precision that suggested artificial intelligence coordination. Foster was working on encryption keys that used mathematical principles we were still discovering. We follow physics, I said. Technology this advanced doesn't just appear overnight. Someone, somewhere, has been developing quantum teleportation and fusion energy for years. We find the research trail. We find the people behind this. How long do you need? I watched the quantum computers processing terabytes of data, searching for patterns in decades of scientific research, patent applications, and academic publications. Somewhere in that vast ocean of information was the answer to who was really running Operation Nightfall. Give me 24 hours, I said, and pray that we're not already too late. As I hung up the phone, Dr. Kim called out from her workstation, "Michael, you need to see this. They're not just moving matter between sites anymore. They're creating it." The quantum signatures she showed me indicated something that violated everything we thought we knew about physics. The network wasn't just teleporting existing materials, it was converting energy directly into matter, creating physical objects from pure power. In 72 hours, whoever controlled this network would have the ability to create anything anywhere, instantaneously. And we still had no idea who they were or what they planned to do with that power. The breakthrough came at 4:17 a.m., when Dr. Rodriguez discovered something that shouldn't have existed. I've been tracking patent applications related to quantum mechanics for the past 15 years, he said, his eyes bloodshot from staring at screens for 18 hours straight. Look at this. He pulled up a series of patent filings that had been submitted to the U.S. Patent Office between 2019 and 2021. At first glance, they appeared to be routine academic research, theoretical papers on quantum entanglement, fusion reactor designs, and energy-to-matter conversion. The kind of speculative science that universities publish to secure funding, but when Rodriguez mapped the filing dates, the inventors, and the funding sources, a pattern emerged that made my stomach drop. Every single patent that would be needed to build this network was filed by the same research collective, he said. They called themselves the Phoenix Institute, 37 scientists from 12 different countries, all working on separate pieces of the same puzzle. Dr. Foster looked up from her workstation. Phoenix Institute doesn't exist. I've run background checks on every scientific organization globally. There's no record of any institute by that name. That's because it was never a real organization, I realized. It was a cover identity. Someone recruited these scientists, had them develop the technology in isolation, then disappeared them. Dr. Kim pulled up personnel records she'd obtained from various universities. Look at this. Dr. Elena Vasquez, quantum physicist from MIT, Dr. Chen Wei-Ming, fusion specialist from Beijing University, Dr. James McKenzie, materials scientist from Oxford. Between 2021 and 2022, all 37 scientists either died in accidents, disappeared, or took sabbaticals, and were never seen again. Someone systematically eliminated everyone who understood the technology, Rodriguez said. Except, he pulled up one final patent filing. This one was different. Instead of being filed under the Phoenix Institute, it was submitted by something called Meridian Dynamics, a private research corporation based in Switzerland. The CEO of Meridian Dynamics is listed as Dr. Alexander Thornfield, Rodriguez continued. A British citizen, educated at Cambridge, worked for NASA's Advanced Propulsion Program until 2018. But here's what's interesting. Dr. Thornfield legally died in a car accident in 2019. Let me guess, I said. 2 months before the Phoenix Institute patents started being filed. 3 weeks. Dr. Kim was already running facial recognition software on every photograph we could find of Dr. Thornfield. If he faked his death, he'd need a new identity. Someone with his scientific background would be difficult to hide completely. The quantum computers worked through millions of facial recognition matches across global databases, immigration records, security cameras, academic conferences, corporate filings, anything that might show someone with Thornfield's physical characteristics operating under a different name. The match came back 37 minutes later. Dr. Marcus Sterling. Dr. Kim announced, CEO of Sterling Technologies, headquartered in Monaco. The company was founded in 2020 with initial funding of $12.7 billion from unnamed investors. 94.7% facial recognition match with Alexander Thornfield. I pulled up everything we could find on Sterling Technologies. What I discovered was a company that didn't seem to produce anything, but had subsidiaries in every country where the quantum sites were being built. This is our guy, I said. Thornfield faked his death, became Marcus Sterling, and used Sterling Technologies to coordinate the construction of the quantum network. Whoa! But he's not working alone. Dr. Rodriguez had been tracking the financial records of Sterling Technologies. The funding didn't come from traditional investors. It came from a distributed network of cryptocurrency transactions that originated from the same 17 individuals you identified in the original analysis. So the financial backers are real, but they're not the masterminds, Dr. Foster said. They're just providing money for someone else's vision. But why? I asked. What does Thornfield get out of building a quantum teleportation network? That's when Dr. Kim made the connection that changed everything. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from the network transmissions, she said. The entanglement patterns aren't random. They're following a mathematical sequence that correlates with human DNA structures. What does that mean? It means the network isn't just designed to teleport matter. It's designed to teleport living organisms, specifically humans. The room went silent. We weren't just looking at advanced transportation technology. We were looking at a system that could instantly relocate people anywhere on Earth. But there's more, Dr. Kim continued. The energy-to-matter conversion capabilities we detected earlier, they're not creating random materials. The quantum patterns suggest they're creating biological matter, organic compounds that match human cellular structure. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his financial analysis. You're saying they can create human beings. I'm saying they can recreate human beings. If you had someone's complete biological data, DNA, cellular structure, neural pathways, this network could theoretically reconstruct them at any node in the system. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about control of resources or strategic advantages. This was about immortality. I called Colonel Hayes immediately. We need to locate Dr. Marcus Sterling in the next 48 hours, I told her. And we need to evacuate the families of everyone working on this project. Why the families? Because if Thornfield has perfected human teleportation and biological reconstruction, he can get to anyone, anywhere at any time. Traditional security means nothing. Where do you think he is? I looked at the global map showing all 89 quantum sites. There was one location that had been bothering me since I first identified the network. Site 45, located in international waters in the Pacific Ocean, was different from all the others. Instead of being built on land, it was constructed on a massive floating platform that moved position regularly. He's on the ocean platform, I said. Site 45. It's mobile, it's in international waters, and it's the one location that can't be reached by conventional military forces. How do you know? Because the quantum transmission patterns all originate from that site. It's not just another node in the network, it's the control center. Dr. Foster had been monitoring global communication networks. Michael, we're seeing massive increases in quantum activity across all sites. Something's happening. I looked at the data streaming across our screens. Power generation at every facility had increased by 340% in the past hour. Quantum entanglement signatures were intensifying. Communication bursts were becoming continuous rather than periodic. They're activating the network, I said. Full operational status within 12 hours. What's the first target? Colonel Hayes asked. I pulled up the communication intercepts we'd been monitoring. There was one transmission that had been repeated every 4 hours for the past 3 days. A set of coordinates that corresponded to a specific location. Washington, D.C., I said. Specifically, the Pentagon. You think they're planning an attack? I think they're planning a demonstration. They want to show the world what the network can do. And they're going to start with the heart of the American military, Dr. Kim called out from her workstation. I'm detecting quantum fluctuations around our current location. They're scanning this facility. The lights in our secure lab flickered. The quantum computers registered massive electromagnetic interference. And then I realized the truth that had been staring us in the face all along. They're not planning to attack the Pentagon, I said. They already know everything we've discovered because they've been monitoring our communications from the beginning. Thornfield doesn't need to attack anyone. He just needs to demonstrate that he can. The secure phone in our lab rang. It was a line that only 5 people in the government had access to. Rodriguez looked at me with confusion. That phone isn't supposed to ring unless there's a national emergency, he said. I answered it, already knowing who would be on the other end.
Hello, Mr.
Chen, said a voice with a slight British accent. This is Dr. Marcus Sterling. I believe we need to talk. The quantum computers around us began displaying a message that none of us had programmed: network activation in 6 hours, 23 minutes, 17 seconds. Please stand by for further instructions. Thornfield had found us, and in 6 hours, he would have the power to reshape reality itself. Dr. Sterling, I said, into the secure phone, trying to keep my voice steady. How did you get this number? His laugh was unsettling, the sound of someone who knew he held all the cards. Mr. Chen, I've been monitoring your progress since the day you first contacted Dr. Martinez about your satellite discoveries. Did you really think your little investigation was happening in secret? Dr. Kim was frantically typing at her workstation, trying to trace the call. The quantum computers were showing interference patterns that shouldn't have been possible through a standard phone line. You're using the quantum network to make this call, I realized.
Very good.
Yes, I'm speaking to you from my headquarters, which is currently positioned approximately 847 miles southwest of your location. The beauty of quantum entanglement is that distance becomes irrelevant. What do you want, Thornfield? Ah, so you've figured out my little identity swap. Impressive work. What I want, Mr. Chen, is for you to understand the magnitude of what you've stumbled into. And more importantly, I want you to make a choice. The screens around our lab suddenly activated, displaying a live video feed. Thornfield, or Sterling, as he now called himself, was standing in what appeared to be a massive control room. Behind him, holographic displays showed real-time status updates from all 89 quantum sites around the globe. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of intense focus that only came from absolute certainty in one's vision. But what struck me most was his calm demeanor. This wasn't someone driven by madness or revenge. This was someone who genuinely believed he was saving the world. Let me show you something, he said, gesturing to one of the displays. Dr. Rodriguez, you've been tracking the financial networks behind this operation. Tell me, what did you discover about the 17 investors? Rodriguez glanced at me nervously before answering. They're some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet, but their backgrounds don't make sense. They should be competitors, not collaborators. Exactly. Klaus Zimmerman made his fortune in renewable energy. Senator Walsh controls agricultural policy. Li Wei-chen dominates rare earth mining. Viktor Petrov owns half the natural gas reserves in Eastern Europe. On the surface, their interests are incompatible. But what if I told you they're all facing the same existential threat? Sterling activated another display showing climate projections, resource depletion models, and population growth curves. The data painted a picture of civilizational collapse within the next 30 years. Climate change will displace 1.2 billion people by 2050. Freshwater reserves will be exhausted in most major population centers by 2055. Agricultural zones will shift so dramatically that current food production systems will collapse. Traditional governments are too slow, too divided, and too corrupt to address these challenges. Dr. Foster looked up from her encryption analysis. So you decided to replace them, not replace them, transcend them. The quantum network you've discovered isn't a weapon, it's a lifeline. When traditional supply chains collapse, we can instantly transport resources where they're needed. When climate disasters displace populations, we can relocate people safely. When governments fail, we can coordinate global responses. By controlling everything, I said. By preserving everything, Mr. Chen, in 18 months, mass climate migration will begin. Traditional borders will become meaningless. Currency systems will collapse under the strain. The choice isn't between freedom and control, it's between coordination and chaos. Dr. Kim had been monitoring the quantum signatures from his transmission. She held up a tablet showing biometric readings. He's telling the truth. No stress indicators, no deception markers. He actually believes this. Sterling smiled. Dr. Kim, your quantum analysis capabilities are quite impressive. Yes, I believe every word I'm saying, because I've seen the alternative. The display changed to show archived footage from what appeared to be advanced climate modeling systems. Coastal cities underwater, massive refugee movements, widespread conflict over dwindling resources. These projections were completed using the quantum computers you're currently working with, Sterling continued. The same systems that identified my network also modeled the consequences of inaction. The mathematics are quite clear. Without coordinated global intervention, human civilization has approximately 15 years before total systemic collapse. And you think you're the solution? I asked. I think I'm the only solution. Traditional democratic processes take decades to implement meaningful change. We have 15 years. The quantum network can coordinate resource distribution, population relocation, and technological development on a scale that no government has ever achieved. Rodriguez had been analyzing the financial data Sterling was sharing. The 17 investors aren't just funding this operation, they're liquidating their existing assets and converting everything into resources for the network. Correct. Klaus Zimmerman is dismantling his renewable energy empire to build fusion reactors for the quantum sites. Senator Walsh is redirecting agricultural subsidies to develop vertical farming systems that can be instantly deployed anywhere via teleportation. They're not preserving their power, they're sacrificing it for survival. Dr. Foster looked troubled. What about the 37 scientists from the Phoenix Institute? What happened to them? Sterling's expression darkened for the first time. They were given a choice: join the network and help save humanity, or continue working within systems that were guaranteed to fail. 36 chose to join us. They're alive and well, working at various sites around the globe. And the 37th, Dr. James Mackenzie from Oxford, chose to expose our work to the British government. Unfortunately, his ethical concerns would have doomed billions of people to die in preventable climate disasters. His sacrifice was necessary. The room went cold. We weren't dealing with a misguided idealist. We were dealing with someone who would commit murder to achieve his vision of saving the world. Now we come to your choice, Mr. Chen, Sterling continued. You've demonstrated capabilities that could be invaluable to our mission. Your pattern recognition systems, your analytical methodologies, they could help us optimize resource distribution and prevent countless deaths. And if I refuse, then you continue working for a government that will be irrelevant within 5 years. You'll watch as traditional political systems collapse under pressures they're incapable of handling. And you'll know that you could have helped prevent the greatest humanitarian crisis in human history. Dr. Kim was monitoring quantum fluctuations around our facility. He's powering up teleportation systems. Multiple nodes are targeting our location. Sterling nodded. I'm offering you a demonstration. In approximately 30 seconds, I'm going to teleport a small object into your laboratory. Nothing dangerous, just proof that the network is operational, and that distance means nothing to us anymore. The quantum computers began registering massive energy spikes. The lights flickered again, and I could feel the hair on my arms standing up from electromagnetic interference. You have 15 seconds to decide, Mr. Chen. Work with us to save humanity, or continue serving a system that's already dead. And my team? They're welcome to join us as well. Dr. Kim's quantum physics expertise would be invaluable. Dr. Foster's encryption skills could help us protect global communications. Dr. Rodriguez's financial analysis capabilities could optimize resource allocation. A bright flash filled the laboratory. When my vision cleared, there was a small metallic cube sitting on my workstation that hadn't been there moments before. Teleportation was successful, Sterling said. That cube contains detailed plans for a desalination system that could provide fresh water for 50 million people. It was constructed on my platform and delivered to your location in 2.3 seconds. I picked up the cube. It was warm to the touch and covered in intricate designs that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. The network is fully operational in 4 hours and 17 minutes, Sterling continued. At that point, we begin coordinating global resource distribution whether traditional governments cooperate or not. You can be part of the solution, or you can watch from the sidelines as we save the world without you. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the data Sterling had shared. The climate projections, if he's right about the timeline, he's not wrong about the crisis, I said. But his solution creates a different kind of problem. Who decides who gets resources? Who determines where people are relocated? Who controls a system that can move anything anywhere instantaneously? We do, Sterling replied simply. The people who were intelligent enough to see the crisis coming and decisive enough to act. The people who sacrificed everything to build the infrastructure that will preserve human civilization. You mean you do? You control the network. You make the decisions, for now. But the system is designed to be self-governing. Once operational, the quantum computers will analyze global resource needs and optimize distribution automatically. Human bias will be eliminated from the equation. Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis of the teleported cube. The plans inside this thing, the technology is incredible. This desalination system could revolutionize water access in developing nations. Exactly, Sterling said. This is what we can accomplish when we stop being limited by political borders and bureaucratic delays. We can solve global problems in real time. I looked around at my team. Dr. Foster was studying the encryption methods used in the cube's data storage. Rodriguez was analyzing the economic implications of Sterling's resource distribution models. Dr. Kim was marveling at quantum engineering principles she'd never seen before. They were all brilliant people who'd dedicated their lives to serving their country. But they were also scientists who understood that traditional institutions might not be equipped to handle civilizational-level threats. What exactly are you asking us to do? I said finally. Sterling smiled. Join us at the control center. See the network in action. Meet the other scientists who've chosen to help save humanity, and then decide whether you want to be part of the most important mission in human history. The quantum computers displayed a new message. Network activation in 4 hours, 12 minutes, 3 seconds. Transportation to Central Command available upon request. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Mom's worried about you. She says you haven't called in 2 weeks. Is everything okay? I almost laughed. My mother, who'd called me a failure, was worried about me while I was deciding whether to help reshape human civilization or try to stop it. We need time to discuss this, I told Sterling. Of course. You have until network activation to decide. After that, the invitation expires. The video feed cut out, leaving us alone with our quantum computers, our classified data, and the most important decision any of us would ever make. The silence in our lab stretched for what felt like hours. Dr. Kim was the first to speak. The technology is real, she said quietly. The desalination plans in that cube, they're 40 years ahead of anything we have. If Sterling's telling the truth about the other innovations, he could end global water scarcity within months. Dr. Foster looked up from her analysis of the cube's encryption. The quantum security protocols are unprecedented, but they're also completely transparent. I can see exactly how the system works. There are no hidden back doors, no secret control mechanisms. It really does appear designed for autonomous operation. Rodriguez had been running economic models based on Sterling's data. The resource distribution algorithms are elegant. They prioritize need over profit, efficiency over politics. If implemented globally, they could eliminate famine within 2 years. I stared at the holographic displays still showing Sterling's climate projections. The mathematics were undeniable. Traditional governments were moving too slowly. Democratic processes, with their built-in delays and compromises, couldn't address threats that required immediate, coordinated global action. But there was something Sterling hadn't addressed, and it was the thing that bothered me most. Dr. Kim, I said, run a quantum analysis on the teleported cube. I want to know exactly when and where it was constructed. She connected the cube to our analysis equipment. The quantum signature readout took 15 minutes to complete. That's impossible, she said, staring at the results. According to the quantum markers, this cube was constructed 3 years ago, but the desalination technology inside it uses principles that weren't discovered until we started analyzing Sterling's network last week. What does that mean? It means Sterling knew we would discover his network. He knew exactly when we would discover it, and he knew exactly what we would find. This whole conversation was planned years in advance. The realization hit me like a physical blow. We hadn't been investigating Sterling's operation. We'd been following a script he'd written for us. I called Colonel Hayes immediately. We've been manipulated from the beginning, I told her. Sterling wanted us to find his network. The satellite anomalies I discovered, the financial connections, even the quantum encryption we've been breaking. It was all designed to lead us to this moment. Why would he want to be discovered? Because he needed someone with my specific skills to validate his technology. He needed the U.S. government to understand what he'd built before he activated it. And he needed to recruit my team. Dr. Rodriguez was pulling up historical data on Sterling Technologies. Look at this. The company was founded with exactly the amount of funding needed to build the quantum network. Not more, not less. Sterling calculated the exact resources required and recruited exactly the right investors to provide them. He's been planning this for decades, Dr. Foster realized. The Phoenix Institute scientists weren't recruited randomly. They were specifically chosen for their expertise in the exact technologies needed for the network. Dr. Kim made another disturbing discovery. I've been analyzing the quantum entanglement patterns from all 89 sites. They're not just connected to each other, they're connected to quantum fluctuations that occurred years before the sites were built, meaning Sterling has been using the quantum network to send information backwards through time. He's been coordinating this operation across multiple timelines. The room went silent. We weren't just dealing with advanced technology, we were dealing with someone who could manipulate causality itself. My secure phone rang again. Sterling's face appeared on our screens, but this time he looked different. Older, more tired. Impressive work, Mr. Chen, he said. Yes, the quantum network allows for limited temporal communication. I've been coordinating this operation across 17 different timeline branches to ensure optimal outcomes. You've been manipulating time itself. Manipulating is the wrong word. Optimizing is more accurate. I've run this scenario 247 times across multiple temporal branches. This is the only version where humanity survives the next 50 years. Dr. Foster looked sick. You're saying we don't have free will? That you've already determined the outcome? You have free will within the parameters of survival. I've simply eliminated the branches where your choices lead to extinction. Sterling activated a display showing branching timeline models. In 73% of scenarios, traditional governments attempt to shut down the quantum network through military action. Global resource wars begin within 18 months. Human civilization will collapse by 2041, and in the other 27%, humanity adapts. The network coordinates global resource distribution. Climate refugees are relocated safely. Technological development accelerates by decades. By 2050, we've established sustainable colonies throughout the solar system. Dr. Kim was studying the temporal mechanics Sterling had revealed. The quantum entanglement patterns. You're not just sending information backwards, you're receiving information from the future. Sterling nodded. The quantum network creates causal loops that allow limited communication across temporal boundaries. I know what happens if we fail because I've received messages from the timelines where we did fail. What did they say? That there are no messages from timelines after 2043, because in those timelines there's no one left to send them. Rodriguez looked up from his economic analysis. The resource allocation algorithms. They're not predictions. They're instructions from future versions of the system that have already optimized global distribution. Correct. The quantum network doesn't just coordinate resources. It coordinates them across time. We can prevent famines by knowing exactly when and where they would occur. We can prevent conflicts by understanding their root causes decades in advance. I thought about the implications. Sterling hadn't just built a system to control global resources. He'd built a system that could guarantee human survival by orchestrating events across multiple timelines. There's something you're not telling us, I said. If you can manipulate time, if you know the optimal outcomes, why do you need us at all? Sterling's expression grew somber. Because in every timeline where I operate the network alone, I become exactly the kind of authoritarian dictator you're afraid of. The power corrupts me. The isolation drives me to make increasingly extreme decisions to preserve human survival. So you need oversight. I need partners. People intelligent enough to understand the technology, ethical enough to question my decisions, and capable enough to take control if I become a threat to the mission. Foster realized what he was really asking. You want us to be your failsafe, the people who stop you if you go too far. Exactly, Mr. Chen. Your pattern recognition abilities make you uniquely qualified to detect if I'm manipulating the system for personal gain, rather than human survival. Dr. Kim's quantum expertise could allow her to modify the network if necessary. Dr. Foster's encryption skills could lock me out of the system entirely. Dr. Rodriguez's financial analysis could expose any corruption in resource allocation. And if we refuse, then I operate the network alone, and according to the temporal communications I've received, I become a monster within 3 years. Humanity survives, but freedom dies. It's not the outcome I want, but it's better than extinction. The quantum computers displayed an updated countdown. Network activation in 1 hour, 47 minutes, 12 seconds. The decision point is approaching, Sterling said. In 90 minutes, the network goes online whether you join us or not. The question is whether you want to help guide humanity's future, or watch it be guided without you. Dr. Kim looked at the temporal data Sterling had shared. If we join you, what guarantee do we have that we're not just becoming part of the problem? None. But you'll have the power to become part of the solution. The network responds to quantum encrypted commands from authorized personnel. If I abuse that power, you can revoke my access and take control yourselves. I thought about my family back in Bakersfield. My mother, who thought I was unemployable. My sister, graduating from Stanford. My father, who changed the subject when people asked about me. In 90 minutes, I would either help save human civilization, or try to stop the only system capable of preventing its collapse. We need to see the network in action, I said finally. If you can really do what you claim, prove it. Sterling smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Please step back from your workstations. The air in our laboratory began to shimmer. Quantum fluctuations registered off the charts on our instruments, and then impossibly, the walls around us dissolved. We were no longer in the underground NSA facility. We were standing on Sterling's ocean platform, surrounded by the most advanced technology I'd ever seen. The quantum computers here made our equipment look like pocket calculators. Welcome to the future, Sterling said. Now let me show you what we're really fighting to preserve. Through the massive windows of the control center, I could see holographic displays showing real-time data from around the globe. Resource flows, population movements, climate patterns, economic indicators, everything needed to coordinate global civilization was at Sterling's fingertips. And in 73 minutes, he would have the power to use it. The question was whether we would help him or try to stop him. And honestly, I still wasn't sure which choice would save more lives. Standing on Sterling's ocean platform was like stepping into a world that existed 50 years in the future. The control center stretched across 3 levels, with holographic displays showing real-time data from every corner of the globe. Scientists moved between workstations with the quiet efficiency of people who knew they were working on the most important project in human history. Kim was immediately drawn to the quantum computers that powered the temporal communication systems. "This is incredible," she whispered. "You're maintaining quantum coherence across 17 different timeline branches simultaneously." "More than that," Sterling replied, leading us to the central command station. "We're coordinating with versions of ourselves across multiple timelines to optimize outcomes in all of them." Dr. Foster examined the security protocols governing the network. "The encryption is completely transparent, Any authorized user can see exactly what commands are being executed and why. Because absolute power requires absolute transparency, Sterling said. The moment this system becomes opaque, it becomes dangerous. Rodriguez was studying the economic models displayed around us. The resource allocation algorithms, they're already running. You're coordinating global food distribution right now, Sterling nodded. We've been conducting limited operations for 6 months, preventing famines, redirecting medical supplies, optimizing shipping routes, all through existing infrastructure, all completely invisible to traditional governments. He activated a display showing recent interventions. A drought in East Africa that had been mitigated by redirecting grain shipments from 3 different continents. A potential conflict in South Asia that had been prevented by anonymous economic investments that stabilized the region. Medical supplies that had mysteriously appeared in refugee camps moments before disease outbreaks. You've been saving lives for months without anyone knowing, I realized. Approximately 2.7 million lives so far. But those are just the small-scale interventions we can accomplish with limited network capacity. Full activation will allow us to coordinate on a planetary scale. Dr. Kim looked up from the quantum computers. I'm seeing temporal communications from the future. Messages dated 3 months from now. What do they say? I asked. Sterling's expression grew serious. They're warnings. In timelines where we activate the network without proper oversight, I make a critical error within 93 days. I prioritize efficiency over individual rights. I begin relocating populations without their consent. I become exactly what you're afraid of. And with oversight, the messages become more positive. Humanity not only survives but thrives. We will establish lunar colonies by 2032. We will solve aging by 2038. We will achieve post-scarcity economics by 2041. The countdown on the central display showed network activation in 47 minutes, 33 seconds. There's something else, Sterling continued. The temporal communications have revealed a problem we didn't anticipate. Other organizations have detected our quantum signatures. They're building competing networks. He activated displays showing similar construction projects in remote locations around the world. The Chinese government has identified 12 of our sites and is building their own quantum network. Russian intelligence has mapped our financial networks and is developing countermeasures. Corporate coalitions are forming to create their own resource distribution systems. How many competing networks? Rodriguez asked. 7, all scheduled to come online within the next 18 months. And unlike our system, theirs are designed for national or corporate advantage, not global cooperation. Dr. Foster understood the implications immediately. If multiple quantum networks come online simultaneously, resource wars fought at the speed of light, Sterling confirmed. Competing systems could teleport weapons, deploy assets, or crash economies instantaneously. The chaos would make traditional warfare look like a diplomatic negotiation. So you're not just racing to save humanity from climate change, I said. You're racing to prevent quantum warfare between competing networks. Exactly. We have a narrow window where our network can establish global coordination before the others come online. Miss that window, and we face scenarios worse than extinction. We face an eternal war fought with technologies that make nuclear weapons obsolete. Kim was monitoring quantum signatures from around the globe. I'm detecting activation preparations from multiple sources. Sites in China, Russia, and what appears to be a corporate network based in Switzerland. They're all planning to activate simultaneously, Sterling said. In approximately 45 minutes, 7 different quantum networks will attempt to establish global dominance. Only one can succeed without triggering cascading conflicts. The weight of the decision hit me fully. This wasn't just about preventing climate disaster anymore. This was about determining which vision of the future would reshape human civilization. What happens if we refuse to join you? I asked. Sterling pulled up probability matrices from the temporal communications. 73% chance our network fails to establish dominance. Competing systems fragment global coordination. Resource wars begin within 6 months. Human civilization fragments into competing quantum-enabled territories. And if we join you, 91% chance of successful network establishment. Global coordination achieved before competing systems can interfere. Humanity unified under a transparent, accountable system designed for survival and prosperity. Dr. Foster looked troubled. But we'd be complicit in creating a global technocracy. No more national sovereignty. No more traditional democracy. Dr. Foster, Sterling said gently, traditional democracy takes years to make decisions that need to be made in hours. Climate disasters don't wait for congressional approval. Pandemics don't pause for election cycles. The choice isn't between democracy and technocracy. It's between coordination and chaos. Rodriguez was studying the competing network data. The other systems, they're not designed for transparency. I can see their financial structures. They're built for control by specific nations or corporations. Which means if we don't establish our network first, Dr. Kim realized, humanity gets coordination anyway. Just not the kind that serves everyone equally. The countdown reached 30 minutes. Around us, the platform's crew was making final preparations for network activation. Scientists were running last-minute diagnostics on quantum computers. Engineers were optimizing power distribution to 89 sites around the globe. This was happening whether we participated or not. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Mom wants to know when you're coming home for dinner." I almost laughed. In 30 minutes, I would either help activate a system that could coordinate global civilization, or I would watch as humanity's future was decided by competing powers who cared more about dominance than survival. "I need to know something," I said to Sterling. "In the timelines where this succeeds, where humanity thrives, do people like my family, ordinary people who just want to live their lives in peace, get to keep doing that?" Sterling activated one more display, showing detailed projections of daily life in the optimized future. "Your mother continues working as a teacher, but with resources to help every student succeed. Your sister uses her Stanford education to develop sustainable technologies that improve millions of lives. Your father saves more patients than ever before with medical advances made possible by global research coordination. They never know about the network. They benefit from it every day, but it operates invisibly. No surveillance, no control over personal choices, just the elimination of scarcity, conflict, and preventable suffering." Dr. Kim looked up from the quantum computers. "I've run my own analysis of the competing networks. They're designed for surveillance and control. If any of them establish dominance, privacy becomes extinct. So our choice is between Sterling's transparent coordination or someone else's authoritarian control," Dr. Foster said. "That appears to be the reality," Rodriguez agreed. "And we have 27 minutes to decide." I thought about everything that had led to this moment. 6 months ago, I was living in my parents' basement, unemployed and directionless. My family thought I was a failure. I thought I was a failure. Now I was standing in the control center of the most advanced technology ever created, with the power to help guide humanity's future. The irony wasn't lost on me that my mother's phone call asking about dinner might be the last normal thing I experienced before everything changed. "If we do this," I said to my team, "there's no going back. We become responsible for every decision this network makes, every life it saves, every mistake it commits." "And if we don't do this, Doctor," Kim replied, "we become responsible for what happens when less ethical systems take control." 23 minutes, the countdown announced. I looked at Sterling, then at my team, then at the holographic displays showing the 7 competing quantum networks preparing for activation around the globe. "We'll need complete access to all network protocols," I said finally. "Full transparency on every decision algorithm, and immediate shutdown capabilities if the system deviates from its mission." Sterling smiled. "Already programmed into the core systems, your quantum signatures are now authorized for full network access. And the competing networks, once we establish global coordination, will integrate the beneficial aspects of their technology while neutralizing their authoritarian control mechanisms. Cooperation, not conquest." Dr. Foster activated her workstation. "I'm implementing additional oversight protocols. Every major decision requires consensus from all 4 of us." Rodriguez was already analyzing resource flows. "I'll monitor the economic impacts to ensure equitable distribution." Dr. Kim began coordinating with the quantum computers. I'll maintain the temporal communication systems and monitor for any attempts to manipulate the timeline. 15 minutes to activation, the countdown announced. I took my position at the central command station, my hands hovering over controls that would help coordinate the survival and prosperity of 8 billion people. Network authorization required, the system announced. Please confirm the activation sequence. I thought about my mother, who'd called me stupid, about the Pentagon officials who'd briefed me on impossible threats, about the choice between imperfect coordination and certain chaos. Authorization confirmed, I said. Activate Operation Nightfall. The quantum computers around us hummed to life with unprecedented power. Holographic displays showed 89 sites around the globe, coming online simultaneously. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear Sterling speaking into a communication device. Dr. Martinez, this is Sterling. Please inform Michael's family that their son is now saving the world. And yes, he'll still make it home for dinner. We can teleport him there. 6 months ago, I was a basement-dwelling failure. Today, I became part of humanity's coordination system. And somehow, my mother's dinner invitation was still the most important thing on my schedule. The future was going to be very different. But maybe, just maybe, it was going to be better. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.